This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Welcome to 4 Countries in 40 Minutes, a podcast series based on the book Esplin, Tom and Edith's Creative Journeys, compiled by Donald Offwood. I'm that blind woman, Julie Woods, and alongside me is my husband and artist, Ron Esplin. Hello, Ron.
Hello, how are you? And I do hope everybody out in the radio land is well too.
And together we are going to cover 4 of the countries visited by Tom and Edith featured in this book. This is podcast 2, and country 2 is Bosnia and Herzegovina. Ron, what is the illustration for this podcast, please?
The illustration is Mostar, which in those days, when this diary was written, was in fact part of Yugoslavia. And now, since the war that has now intervened and is over, it's part of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Great. And how did your father approach painting Mostar?
Well, he recognised what a beautiful scene it is, and I've painted the scene as well. It's on the river Neretva, and the famous bridge that's in Mostar, in fact, fell during the civil war in Yugoslavia. No one knows who destroyed it. You couldn't say who would. So no one ever found out, but it was blown up, and the incredible mess that it made, I guess, they were very successful, and it fell into the Neretva River, and it's made of the local stone, which is like a reddish colour, and the locals saw the river running red, and they said, "The river is bleeding."
So your mother and father saw it before the war, and we saw it after the war. What did your mother see as she wrote in her diaries on her travels of Mostar and Yugoslavia as it was then?
Well, we'll take it from the 17th of October, and as she said, we came through here by bus, past the coastline for almost half the journey, blue sea and little fishing villages clinging onto the side of the rock, with tiny harbours, 1 or 2 bigger villages, but with drab concrete, even the roof. Then inland through the flat land of the delta of the river, intersected by waterways and miles of vegetables and sweet corn. People paddling small craft up and down the tiny canals to tend these long, narrow patches on strips of land on which the vegetables grow. Gradually, after going through a naval base, we came to Mostar, which is totally different from anything we expected. It's a much bigger industrial area, and only one tiny area of a picturesque nature where the famous bridge and the tiny streets of old Turkish houses still remain. There are many mosques showing the Turkish influence. We at first wanted to come on to Dubrovnik, but decided against it as we want to make the journey in daylight. We were rewarded by being able to see the bridge floodlit at night. So the following day, Wednesday the 18th of October, we had an eventful day starting at the bus station at Mostar. When the 10:30 a.m. bus didn't arrive, and we had almost despaired of it ever coming, and had decided yet once again we had been misinformed, when it appeared, we then found we were once more surprised, as so often we have been in Yugoslavia, that the bus was half empty instead of the usual sardine-like squash, and that it was an old bus, and that set off in the wrong direction altogether. It all seemed somewhat perplexing, but turned out to be the best possible thing, for in spite of all appearances, it was the right bus, and it was going to Dubrovnik. But it took us a totally different way from the route we followed yesterday and expected to return by today. Up into the hills and over the most primitive road, through tiny hamlets where no tourist goes, it was marvellous. The villages themselves completely natural and unspoiled, unaffected and going quietly about their business. The lively trees, golden bright autumn sunshine, the quiet houses deep in the valley landscape, the country people climbing onto the bus, and particularly the driver and conductor, who could not have been two nicer souls, doing their jobs to the best of their ability, helpful to all passengers and also to us. On the journey, the bus stopped and the conductor leaned out and picked some fresh figs from a tree, then handed us two each, and when we hesitated, he thrust them into our hands and saying, "Good, good." The bus came through Trebinje and stopped for 10 minutes, long enough for us to go and see the old mosque and marketplace there. Dubrovnik we reached about 4 p.m, 5 hours after leaving Mostar, and the conductor spent several minutes carefully dusting our 3 cases, which were covered with the dust. We put our 2 heavy cases into left luggage and got a bus into the gates of the old city, which is totally enclosed. Unlike anything we had imagined, it is attractive in its way, and somehow a little contrived, almost museum-like. Not the living city we'd thought it would be, but preserved artificially, although this is difficult to define really. We are in this little hotel in the old town near the harbour, of which we've had a glimpse, and will reserve our judgment until tomorrow, when we'll know more about it. So that's Mostar, and the next step was on to Dubrovnik, which is the capital of I've forgotten where we are.
And that's where they arrived in what was Yugoslavia when they travelled.
Yes.
And, of course, when we went, it was Bosnia and Herzegovina.
That's right.
I like the way your mother talks about the sardine squash. She picks up on those things that you notice when you travel, but we don't always talk about. The sardine squash isn't something that typically happens on a bus in Dunedin. But it certainly does when you travel and catch public transport.
Well, we were travelling through the day, so often it was women. Rather, the men had already gone to work by that stage, and they were all all these women were dressed in black, and they all look exactly the same. So you wouldn't, fortunately, didn't have to identify who was who. But they were perfectly friendly, weren't they? And although they didn't speak the language.
No, well, that doesn't matter because look at the language of figs. Taking 2 figs and giving them to Tom and Edith, and it's such a lovely thing to do, isn't it? And to experience hospitality from a country.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Of course, as I said before, they went to Yugoslavia before the war. We went to Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia after the war. And I remember my entry for the visit to Mostar for touch was the feel of the bullet holes on the wall. And as you said, they bombed the bridge and then rebuilt it.
Fortunately, UNESCO came to their help, and they put money up to rebuild that bridge. It was such an icon.
Yes. Well, it obviously captured your father's imagination as it did yours. And I remember when we went on the bus into Mostar, we had told the guide, and she stopped the bus on the bridge and told everybody that, not that bridge, but the bridge that looked over to the Mostar Bridge, and told everybody the story that your father had painted it and you were going to be doing the same, which you did.
And my wife was a very friendly and kind and helpful person, and she submitted to sitting to have a cup of coffee while I walked back up to where that view was, and then took photographs of it for the painting that I'd later do.
I think how it went is you plonked me at a cafe table, bought me a bottle of Fanta and buggered off for half an hour, and I was conversing in my best Bosnian and had a lovely time. So glad that all worked out. You've been listening to 4 Countries in 40 Minutes, a podcast series based on the book Esplin, Tom and Edith's Creative Journeys, compiled by Donald Offwood and published in 2007 by Caxton Press. If you'd like to contact me, Julie, you can do so by sending me an email to julie@thatblindwoman.co.nz or to Ron esplinartist@gmail.com. This has been podcast 2 of 4, and we look forward to seeing you here for podcast 3. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, listeners.
Bye-bye. I'm That Blind Woman, Julie Woods, proud sponsor of 7 Wonders in 70 Minutes. The World in 360 Minutes is a sound project containing 36 10-minute episodes taking you across the globe. We started with the first series, Around the World in 80 Minutes, and then 7 Wonders in 70 Minutes. In these podcasts, we explore what we see when we travel, me through my 4 senses and Ron through his paintbrush. You can check me out, That Blind Woman Julie Woods, at thatblindwoman.co.nz or ring me on 021 913 513. Why not?
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.